In the previous episode, the reckless Stefan decided to test his theory by pushing things to dangerous extremes and beheading one of Klaus's hybrids. Klaus retaliated by having Tyler bite Caroline to punish Stefan. Klaus attended the town's fundraising event, which was held to restore Wickery Bridge, the very bridge where Elena's adoptive parents died in a car accident. Damon was caught off guard by the fact that Mayor Lockwood had already sided with Klaus. First, Klaus, being incredibly wealthy, promised to match whatever amount the town raised in donations. Second, Carol's son Tyler was under Klaus's control, and no one could stand against this monstrous force.
Klaus has promised to protect Tyler, Damon, and our town.
From who? His hybrids are the ones that the town needs protection from.
Klaus wants to control Mystic Falls and limit the living space of the Salvatore brothers. Even though human power is small, if used correctly, it can still cause trouble for the Salvatore brothers. Carol urged Damon to keep his brother in check and stop him from antagonizing Klaus, warning that otherwise, they would be making enemies of the entire town. Carol had completely aligned herself with Klaus, and Damon now had to ensure that Sheriff Forbes was on his side. Sheriff Forbes assured Damon that she would never fall under Klaus's control, which greatly relieved him, but Sheriff Forbes was unaware that her daughter Caroline had been poisoned with werewolf venom, and the only cure was Klaus's blood. At the fundraiser, Alaric encountered Dr. Fell once again. To Alaric's surprise, Fell knew about the existence of vampires, revealing that her ancestors had participated in vampire hunts. Just then, Fell was being harassed by her ex-boyfriend Brian, and Alaric intervened in their argument. Brian sneered and said to Alaric, "Before you become her Prince Charming, you may need to understand her first. She's a bit of a psychopath." It seemed Fell had more secrets. Brian warned Alaric to stay away from Fell before storming off in anger. From Fell, Alaric learned that Brian was the town's coroner and that he knew about the vampire secrets. It was Brian who covered up the deaths of innocent townsfolk who had been harmed by vampires. After Fell left, Alaric took a long, lingering look in the direction Brian had gone. Stefan had also snuck into the event, and just as he was about to behead a hybrid, he was stopped by his brother Damon. For everyone's safety, Damon had no choice but to compromise with Klaus, especially since if all the hybrids were killed, Elena would need to be bled by Klaus again. But Stefan, unconcerned, said, "Protecting Elena is your job. My mission is to take down Klaus at any cost." Damon angrily retorted, "Even if you've turned off your humanity, you should still use your brain." Although killing the hybrid was out of the question, Stefan had thought of an even more ruthless plan. Since Caroline hadn't returned for a long time, Elena and Matt had no choice but to go out searching for her. To their surprise, Stefan appeared, knocked Matt unconscious, and kidnapped Elena.
Hello, Damon. She's a little busy right now.
Why the hell do you have Elena's phone?
Making my next move. Let me ask you something. What's Klaus gonna do if we can't make any more hybrids?
What?
Stefan, leave her out of this.
Stefan floored the gas pedal, ignoring Elena's screams, and then dialed Klaus's number. He threatened Klaus with Elena's life, stating that if the hybrid army didn't leave town, he would turn Elena into a vampire. Klaus, knowing Stefan's love for Elena, assumed he was bluffing. Stefan responded with action. He forcibly made Elena drink his blood. Some of you might remember that Damon once used the same tactic, and Elena hated him for a long time because of it. Stefan had truly changed. He no longer respected Elena's choices. If Elena turned into a vampire, her blood would no longer be able to create hybrids. Finally, Klaus started to take the threat seriously, but he still refused to back down. So Stefan sped up, heading straight for Wickery Bridge, the very place where Elena's adoptive parents lost their lives.
Stop the car, Stefan!
Stefan won against Klaus, but he lost Elena. This bridge had always been a source of lingering pain for Elena, and now it held another painful memory. Stefan only felt wronged. He had been bluffing, but he had to make it real, or Klaus wouldn't have believed him. They had first met because of this bridge, and now they parted ways here. Stefan drove off alone, leaving Elena behind. Matt woke up, found Caroline, and took her home, which forced Sheriff Forbes to bow to Klaus as well. Klaus came to the house personally to deliver the cure, and Sheriff Forbes conceded. Caroline, wounded in both body and spirit, resembled a wilting flower.
Are you going to kill me?
On your birthday? Do you really think that low of me?
Yes.
Caroline's condition was worsening, and Klaus noticed her bracelet. He wondered how the son of the town's mayor could have given such a cheap gift. Klaus showed an unknown, gentle side, Becoming a vampire had always been a burden for Caroline, making her feel like she was already dead, but Klaus told Caroline that it was freedom. In the past 1,000 years, he had occasionally longed to live and die like a human.
But I'll let you in on a little secret. There's a whole world out there waiting for you. Great cities and art.
Klaus rolled up his sleeves, cradled the weakened Caroline in his arms, and encouraged her to embrace her new life.
Happy birthday, Caroline.
The next day, Caroline woke up to find a beautifully crafted necklace, a birthday gift from Klaus, placed on her nightstand. Meanwhile, the town coroner, Brian, had been murdered. Damon and Sheriff Forbes arrived at the crime scene and discovered that although Brian was human, he had been killed using methods meant for vampires. It was clear the killer knew about vampires. Sheriff Forbes tasked Damon with investigating the murder, and suspicion quickly fell on the coroner's ex-girlfriend. Fel and Brian had argued shortly before the murder. Coincidentally, Alaric had been getting close to Fel, so Damon sought him out to gather information. Alaric was shocked to learn of Brian's murder. Brian had mentioned that Fel was mentally unstable, which only reinforced Damon's belief that she was the killer. Damon then went to the hospital to confront Fel. Using Brian's death to test her, Fel claimed she knew nothing about it. This played right into Damon's hands. He had obtained Brian's death certificate, and the signature on it was Fel's. Fel invited Damon inside to discuss the matter further, but as soon as Damon stepped inside, he was ambushed by Fel, who used vervain to knock him out. While Damon was unconscious, Fel drew several vials of his blood. Meanwhile, ever since Tyler bit Caroline, he has been determined to break free from Klaus's control. So Tyler brought in Bill, a man known for his steely resolve, to help him strengthen his willpower. It was only then that Caroline learned Tyler had bitten her because he was under Klaus's control. It's a shame that she had previously developed a little bit of a favorable impression of that big devil. Bill believed that the essence of loyalty lies in gratitude. Klaus had freed the werewolves from the agony of transformation, so they were willing to go to any lengths for him. If Tyler could face the transformations without fear and control the pain, he could break free from Klaus's control. A werewolf's transformation is like being shattered into pieces, and if Tyler wanted to escape Klaus's grasp, he would have to endure the transformation over and over again. Caroline couldn't bear to see Tyler suffer, so at Bill and Tyler's request, she left. After Caroline left, Bill suddenly grabbed an axe and began viciously attacking Tyler. First, to anger Tyler and force a faster transformation. Second, to settle a personal vendetta. When Damon woke up, he immediately went to find Alaric to vent his frustrations. That woman is definitely up to something. She drained so much of my blood.
Approved your theory. Diagnosed psycho case. You're welcome.
By evening, Tyler's training was still ongoing. Experiencing the agony of transformation repeatedly had driven him to the brink of madness, and the chains binding him were no longer secure. Sensing danger, Bill prepared to flee, but Tyler had already broken free of his restraints. Alaric went to the hospital to confront Fel, cutting straight to the chase and demanding to know her true intentions. Fel was about to explain when the hospital admitted a critically injured patient. Bill. Apparently, Tyler had severely wounded Bill. Taking advantage of the moment when no one was watching, Fel injected Damon's blood into Bill. It turns out she was doing it to save someone. Bill recovered quickly, but he couldn't be discharged immediately without raising suspicion. A remorseful Tyler came to visit. Bill graciously forgave Tyler, acknowledging that he knew the risks when he decided to return to town. Tyler thought his training was over, but Bill told him this was just the beginning.
To break the sire bond, turning needs to be painless.
Alaric then confessed to Fel that he was a vampire hunter and revealed the secret of his resurrection ring. Fel was very interested in the daylight ring, and there was a constant sense that she had bad intentions.
Are you worried I'm a supernatural being?
One can never be too careful.
That morning, Bonnie had another nightmare. She found herself in her family's crypt, where a mysterious coffin stood out, glaringly obvious. As an anxious Bonnie was about to open it, Klaus suddenly lunged at her, and in the next moment, Bonnie was trapped inside the coffin. The confined, dark space only amplified her fear, and Bonnie pounded and wailed incessantly. Suddenly, the coffin was opened by a woman who bore a striking resemblance to Bonnie. The fourth coffin holds the key to destroying Klaus, and this nightmare was a guide. The woman in Bonnie's dream is the key to opening it. Bonnie told Elena about the coffin. Through old photos, Bonnie discovered that the woman in her dream was, in fact, her mother, who had abandoned her 15 years ago. No wonder they looked so alike. With the information provided by Sheriff Forbes, Bonnie found out her mother Abby's address. Elena and Bonnie prepared to leave, and Damon was about to join them, but Elena stopped him, saying that a mother-daughter reunion didn't need his commentary. It's safe to say Elena knows Damon all too well. Bonnie noticed the awkwardness between them.
What's going on with you two?
We kissed. Now it's weird. Have a great trip.
To distract Klaus, Stefan invited him over to drink. Klaus wanted to give Stefan another chance, but Stefan wasn't having it. He sarcastically suggested, "How about you leave town now, and I'll reach out in 100 years?" Klaus laughed, saying by then, Elena would be long dead. On the surface, Stefan seemed to have the upper hand, but Klaus could see the cost Stefan was paying.
Crazy Stefan. How's that working out for you? Any friends left?
Hearing this, Stefan's smile faded. He had turned himself into a monster to fight Klaus. They thought they had kept Klaus in the dark, but little did they know, Klaus had already gotten intel from the police and sent Daniel to find Abby's house before Elena and Bonnie arrived.
Can I help you?
Abby Bennett Wilson?
That's me.
Unexpectedly, Abby had another child, which made Bonnie want to back out immediately, but Elena stopped her. The boy, surprised to learn who Bonnie was, quickly explained his identity. His name was Jamie, and he was Abby's adopted son. Bonnie felt even more disappointed with her mother, realizing she was willing to raise someone else's child but not return to her own. When Abby returned, she immediately recognized her daughter. Instead of being shocked, she seemed relieved. It was as if she had been waiting for this day. As it turned out, Abby had her reasons. Years ago, Michael, the father of the originals, had taken an interest in Elena's doppelganger identity. Abby, who was a close friend of Elena's adoptive mother, had lured Michael out of town and used all her magic to seal him away. Having lost her powers, Abby wanted to live a normal life, so she left Mystic Falls. Bonnie sarcastically remarked, "Well, since you don't have any magic, I guess you won't be much help," and then prepared to leave. Abby hurriedly tried to persuade Bonnie to stay, hoping to repair their mother-daughter bond. Sensing the tension, Elena wisely stepped outside, only to find that Stefan had followed her. He acted cold and indifferent, but it was clear he was deeply worried about Elena. At that moment, Jamie suddenly shot Stefan with a wooden bullet, injuring him. Bonnie was about to go out and check, but her mother drugged her with medicine. It turned out that the hybrid Daniel had compelled Jamie. If Abby didn't find out the location of the coffin, Jamie would be forced to shoot himself. Bonnie had no choice but to give in. When Damon got word, he immediately rushed to the witch's ancestral home, only to find that Klaus had already arrived. The spirits of the witches not only cast an invisibility spell on the coffins but also inflicted Klaus with a splitting headache. Damon, enjoying the show, made some snide remarks, saying, "So what have you found this place?" Klaus, however, became more and more determined despite his setbacks.
And I have no problem killing every last one of them if I don't get my coffins back. As we speak, my hybrid friend is prepared to end the Bennett line.
Klaus's sheer dominance intimidated the spirits of the witches. Not only did all the candles extinguish, but the invisible coffin also appeared obediently. Damon had to admit he was impressed. Absolute power even frightened the dead. Klaus's smile suddenly froze. Though, because only 3 coffins were there, it turned out that Damon had already moved the final coffin. Having anticipated this scenario, an angry Klaus was powerless, and he could only threaten Damon with harsh words. The Salvatore brothers were proving to be more troublesome than he had anticipated. Despite his burning rage, Klaus still took the 3 coffins with him. At last, Klaus had gathered the bodies of his siblings. Daniel, who had been instrumental in this, earned Klaus's approval, but in the next moment, he felt a chilling sensation in his chest as his heart was ripped out. The original Elijah had been resurrected. Klaus hadn't expected that Damon had one more trick up his sleeve. He had already removed the dagger that sealed Elijah.
What did I miss?
While investigating the murder of the town coroner, Brian, the weapon was found to have Elena's fingerprints on it. Elena was shocked when she heard the news. Fortunately, Sheriff Forbes didn't believe Elena was the killer. Damon believed that Fell was framing Elena and even referred to her as the trampy doctor. It seems that Damon is still bitter about Fell pumping his blood. Alaric assured Elena that Fell was using vampire blood to save lives and would never commit such a crime. Surprisingly, Elena began to suspect Stefan, simply because of his recent erratic behavior. So, Elena sought out Stefan, who was hiding in the tomb. Stefan, determined to protect Elena, was focused on opening the final coffin. He was hurt when Elena doubted him, and he expressed his displeasure through cold indifference. The rift between them only grew wider. Later, Elena accompanied Caroline to the hospital to pick up her father, only to discover that Bill had been murdered. Caroline panicked, but Elena quickly reminded her that Bill had vampire blood in his system and wouldn't truly die. Sure enough, Bill revived in the next moment, but he had entered the transition phase. If he didn't drink human blood, he would still die. To Elena's dismay, Bill couldn't identify his attacker. Caroline was desperate to save her father, but Bill insisted he would rather die than become a vampire. He had spent his entire life fighting against vampires, and his resolve was unbreakable. Elena and Caroline were shocked, especially Caroline. As a vampire, she knew better than anyone the overwhelming craving for blood during the transition, yet her father could suppress his body's primal urges with sheer willpower. That evening, Alaric and Elena took inventory of the weapons. Both murders had been committed using Alaric's weapons, and even he had to admit that Fell was the prime suspect. Elena couldn't understand why Fell would save Bill only to then try to kill him. Alaric suggested that Fell might have a mental illness, possibly even a split personality. Caroline planned to force her father to drink blood, believing that even a cursed existence was better than death. But Elena told Caroline, "You shouldn't take away your father's right to choose." Matt arrived to comfort Caroline, and then they left, allowing Caroline to spend her father's final moments with him. When Elena got home, she found the house covered in blood, and Alaric barely clinging to life. He hadn't seen who the attacker was. Panicked, Elena was at a loss, but Alaric urged her to kill him, saying it was the safest option. As a doppelganger, Elena counted as a supernatural being. Since they couldn't determine if the attacker was a supernatural being, the only way for the resurrection ring to work now was for Elena to kill Alaric. Meanwhile, during Bill's final moments, he and Caroline reminisced about their past, and in their deep conversation, they finally opened up to each other. Caroline believed that with her father's strong will, he wouldn't lose control even if he became a vampire, but the problem was that Bill's convictions were rooted in his rejection of vampires. If he became one, those beliefs would be destroyed, and he might go to the opposite extreme. So, he couldn't take that step.
Can you hate who I am so much?
Oh, no, sweetheart, I don't hate you. I love you. You're strong. You're beautiful. You're good.
It turned out Bill had long since accepted his daughter. Caroline's attempt to provoke him into surviving failed, and she could only plead with her father not to leave her.
Caroline.
Bill passed away, surrounded by his wife and daughter. At the same time, Alaric came back to life. Sheriff Forbes later informed Elena that Fell had been under surveillance and had a solid alibi. With Fell cleared of suspicion and Alaric now a victim, the serial murders were becoming more mysterious and perplexing. Klaus had finally reclaimed his family's bodies, only to find himself outmaneuvered by Damon. Elijah was resurrected, and his anger at Klaus's betrayal was palpable. Without hesitation, he attacked Klaus, but in terms of sheer strength, Klaus was the strongest among the originals. Since they couldn't resolve things peacefully, Klaus pulled out the dagger used to seal Cole and threatened Elijah to back off. Elijah, however, was unfazed by Klaus's threat, challenging him to go ahead and seal him, warning that Cole's fury would be just as intense as his. With Damon having stolen one of the daggers, Klaus realized he would have to face the wrath of one brother no matter what, and he preferred dealing with Elijah. It turned out that their younger brother Cole had been sealed by Klaus for over 100 years, but Cole is not the worst. Finn, the eldest brother, has been sealed by Klaus for 900 years, and he is not as good as an ordinary vampire. Klaus was forced to reveal to Elijah that he had killed their tyrannical father, claiming they could now reunite as a family. Elijah was stunned and demanded to know why Klaus hadn't unsealed the others. Klaus admitted that the Salvatore brothers had taken the fourth coffin, and the secret inside was something the other siblings couldn't know, but he was willing to share it with Elijah. After saying this, Klaus resealed Cole. Elijah, longing for family unity, chose to trust Klaus once again. In reality, the fourth coffin had been hidden by Stefan in the old tomb, where Bonnie and her mother were working to figure out how to open it. It turned out that the coffin had been sealed by their ancestors, requiring the combined power of 2 generations to open it. To buy time, the Salvatore brothers arranged a truce meeting with the Michelson brothers. Klaus prepared an elaborate dinner, and instead of getting straight to the point, they began with casual conversation. Surprisingly, the 2 pairs of brothers were so alike they had both fallen in love with the same face. Over 1,000 years ago, Elijah and Klaus had both fallen in love with a girl named Tatia. Tatia was an ancestor of Catherine's, and much like Elena, she was torn between the Michelson brothers, which led to a rift between them. To prevent her sons from turning against each other, their mother, Esther, killed Tatia and used her blood to create the potion that turned them into vampires. However, this didn't damage the bond between the Michelson brothers.
But in the end, we recognized the sacred bond of family.
Family above all.
Family above all.
Damon and Stefan glanced at each other. Meanwhile, after Bonnie and her mother combined their magic, they finally managed to unseal the fourth coffin. Since there was no signal in the tomb, Bonnie stepped outside to send a message. That's when the coffin suddenly opened on its own. At the same time, the candles suddenly burned with intense flames, clearly caused by powerful magic.